Watch out for the phrase, the more intelligent the person, the harder it is to understand the product. Welcome to the 24th episode of Let's Talk About Electric Vehicles. My name is Teresa, I'm an economist, and in my free time I host this podcast about electric vehicles where I try to answer questions like how many EVs can our electricity grid handle, or when we will run out of lithium and cobalt, or any other EV related questions that I myself am interested in. Today it is solely myself talking to you without my co-host Theo, and I want to talk about something that has been on my mind for a very long time. If you're an engineer, you probably guessed by the title what I'm going to talk about, namely perpetual motion machines and how the electrification of transport systems offers them the perfect cozy climate to flourish and spread. Theo reminded me at this point that perpetual motion machines are not the only type of scam in the EV industry, so take perpetual motion just as an example case, please. In case you have no idea of what I'm talking about, this episode is for you. We will discuss several indicators for scammers that take advantage of uneducated investors in times where markets and technologies are changing rapidly. What are perpetual motion machines? So Teresa, what the heck are you talking about? In short, a perpetual motion machine is a hypothetical machine that can do work indefinitely without a corresponding energy input. For example, if you have a wind generator that powered a fan, which then produced enough wind in order to keep the wind generation going. Hence, a windmill producing its own wind to keep going. This machine would never stop running. If you Google perpetual motion machine, you will find many other examples. In reality, physical laws, friction, and other losses would make the existence of such a machine impossible. Some machines look like perpetual motion at first glance, but usually, if you take a closer look, there is an additional energy input somewhere. It is safe to say that up to this date there has not been a single working prototype of a perpetual motion machine. Some people claim to have found one, but again there's usually an external energy input or the demo is simply manipulated. Researchers still keep on searching for perpetual motion though. Or if they can't build a forever self-running machine, they try to reduce energy losses to a minimum and come as close as possible to perpetual motion. Efficiency losses could be, for example, heat, friction, abrasion, and so on. Even more impossible would be to build a machine that produces more energy output than you put in. Hence, output would be greater than input. This would violate the law of thermodynamics and the law of conservation of energy. In the example of the wind generator, that would mean that the fan that is powered by the wind generator would not only create the power that is required to keep the windmill running, but produce even more wind so you could light the light bulb with the excess energy. Honestly, that sounds so good. More output than input? Infinite energy production? Think about how many problems this would solve. We would have self-charging electric vehicles, self-powering electricity generators, and we could conquer climate change. In the fast-changing world of electrified transportation, it is hard to keep up to date with the latest technology. Manufacturers are anxious of missing out, and consumers and private investors can easily be overly excited. It is relatively easy to mislead people who don't have deep technical knowledge by hiding the actual energy input within a complex system. Even people with technical knowledge and experience are sometimes challenged and struggle to figure out whether they should believe what they see or not. I myself am no exception. Today, I will introduce you to the strategies that I have come up with in order to detect scammers and to evaluate the credibility of tech innovations. Starting off by some indicators that the product might be a hoax. A little disclaimer before we start. Please keep in mind that these are just potential indicators. Not every tech startup that fulfills one or more of these indicators is producing a fake product, but it does make sense to keep an eye on these things. Indicator number 1. If the company never published their results in a peer-reviewed publication, especially if the inventor stems from an academic background and has connections to a post-secondary institution. By publishing parts of the invention in a peer-reviewed study, the inventor could gather helpful information through comments and critiques from experts in that field. However, sometimes it is strategically smarter to keep the findings private, at least until the first business success arises. If there is a peer-reviewed publication, it just shows that the inventor is open for professional feedback, so that's a good sign. On the other hand, a bad sign, very bad sign, would be if the inventor says, the more intelligent or the more expertise someone has, the harder it is for them to understand the product.
What the hell?
This phrase actually tells a lot. It undermines the credibility of critical experts, and at the same time, it flatters anyone who is interested in the technology. Do you see the discrepancy? If the product is so complex, why would an inexperienced person understand it quicker? If anything, then it may take a while until an experienced expert will get it, that's okay. But the inexperienced person will always take even longer to understand it. Using this phrase is an indicator for the inventor aiming to take advantage of investors without proper technical knowledge. The next indicator has to do with the prototype. Is it working? Did the producer have the chance to build a proper prototype? If yes, where is the prototype? If it is a motor, I want to see how it runs in the vehicle, outside, on the street. Fresh startups oftentimes did not have the financial opportunity yet to build such a prototype. If there's no working prototype despite several years of research and several business relationships and opportunities, there must be a reason. There might be a prototype, but the demo is only possible under certain circumstances, and visitors sometimes only get access to certain parts of the machine, or visitors cannot see what the measuring instruments are actually attached to. Some parts of the product remain hidden. Maybe it only works under laboratory conditions. If you're an engineer, ask yourself, could you rebuild the prototype? What information would you need in order to rebuild the prototype? These are all things that you should keep an eye on when it comes to the prototype. Next indicator. I know that it is hard to find business partners and investors as a tech startup, but if there's no significant business success despite various past opportunities and despite an already established network, something is wrong. Many alleged perpetual motion machines that I found on the internet have been out there for ages and have had many views and clicks. Imagine, if this machine was real, it would have been a huge business success. Also, some scammers refer to big names and brag with great business relationships to global leaders in the sector and to other highly respected institutions. If the business relationships are that good, why isn't there any observable business success? Scammers are usually very enthusiastic and encouraging at the early stages of a business relationship, but become vague and distant as soon as it gets more concrete and more serious. This could be an indicator. In particular, as soon as a potential customer indeed wants to rebuild the prototype or wants to test the product under real-world conditions, the producer suddenly doesn't reply that often anymore and becomes hard to reach or just completely disappears. Bye! The producer will eventually abandon the investor as soon as he fears that his fake product will be exposed. The next indicator on my list even has a specific term to describe it: gish galloping. In short, gish galloping means to provide lots of unimportant information and facts in order to confuse people or to distract them from the actual facts, when explanations are more complex than they actually have to be. So quantity over quality. Scammers who use this strategy typically provide so much information that it is hard to keep up with. A potential investor may feel intimidated and uninformed by all of the technical terms and calculations. It makes the invention look genius and professional, but it's actually quite simple to debunk, and we will talk about the debunk strategies in a minute. Sometimes scammers like to even make up technical terms so it sounds more professional, and at the same time it intimidates an engineer who is hearing this term for the first time, implying that he or she is not intelligent enough or does not have enough knowledge in order to understand this product. If the inventor gives you the exact same response 5 times in a row, then something is odd, which leads us to the next indicator: repetition. Showing the exact same demo procedure and using the exact same phrases in the explanation does not necessarily increase the credibility of the technology. By contrast, showing demos in different setups, maybe with different measuring methods under various conditions, and addressing specific critical requests is indeed an efficient method to show that the product is legit. There's one more indicator that I would like to highlight. If producers of an innovation overly emphasize that they have a patent, come on, the patent itself doesn't necessarily prove anything. In fact, in order to get a US patent on a machine, it doesn't even have to properly work. An engineer told me also that perpetual motion machines are banned from patents, but builders of perpetual motion machines usually don't label them as perpetual motion. In fact, perpetual motion seems to be a very insulting term. By calling something perpetual motion, you immediately imply that it is a hoax. Therefore, people, please be mindful about what to call perpetual motion. With that being said, coming now to the prevention strategies. So how can a person that is not an electrical engineer detect whether a product's invention is real? Now, the prevention strategies. Prevention strategies.
What the heck?
Scammers that promise unrealistic performances of electric vehicles, such as self-charging EVs, they can hurt the EV industry because they damage the credibility of actual experts and actual ingenious inventions. And journalists who promote these unrealistic EV performances are just irresponsible. But what can a green journalist do in order to evaluate a product's credibility? The following tips are methods that I personally use and that have helped me a lot. So the first helpful tip: talk, and ask. Ooh, have you ever tried to say ask 3 times in a row? Talk, and ask. Even if you're an engineer, I know that it is hard to find a balance between openness and skepticism, so joining discussions and listening to different opinions helps. Next tip: always look for the energy input, guys. Ask yourself, could there be a hidden input? And by hidden, I don't necessarily mean that the producer or the inventor is trying to hide something. It could be an energy input that is just not obvious at first sight. Never be afraid to ask the inventor questions. If he or she gives you the exact same answer 3 times in a row and you still don't get it, then ask a 4th time. Don't feel intimidated or embarrassed if you don't understand something. If you can, ask experts in that field for their opinion. Big manufacturers, of course, they have their own group of experts to evaluate the relevance of different technologies. If the most generous assumptions and physical laws do not apply to the product, then it will most probably not get any clearer when going into more detail. So understand the most basic processes first and then dive into the complex details later. But at the same time, be open and don't screw something just because you don't understand how it works. The next tip is something that I personally did, and it really doesn't require that much effort. If the inventor refers to references or quotes from other customers, institutions, or any kind of reference, give these references a call. Give them a call, ask them about their experiences with this product. You can also contact previous business partners, just anyone who might give you information about this company. Ask the inventor if they can connect you with previous customers or business partners. What I do is I have a spreadsheet of every name and every institution that the company ever refers to, and then I just start calling as many as is required in order to be convinced that the business is trustworthy. As for perpetual motion machines, you can watch out for keywords like infinite energy, which is typically a red flag. Okay, before we let this episode come to an end, I want to be really honest with you guys. I once published an interview with an inventor, and shortly after, I received some messages of people saying that this product is not real. By now, I have consulted with several experts. I gathered a lot more knowledge, so I did my homework. I used the above mentioned strategies. Is it perpetual motion? Is it not? Is he a scammer, a genius, or does he just misinterpret his results? The honest answer is I don't know, and I probably never will. The truth is, many researchers are working on finding over 100% efficiency, and it's totally fine. This field is called over-unity, and engineers with a conventional engineering education are oftentimes not familiar with this type of research and hastily mark something as perpetual motion. Anyways, it is not on me to decide whether or not this is a real science, and I have my own opinion about this invention based upon my investigation, but I'm not going to share my opinion with you. However, what I wanted to share with you were these tips and tricks on how to evaluate an invention's worth. So, with that being said, let us repeat what these tips were. Some electric vehicle innovations promise unrealistic performance and hurt the credibility of actual EV experts. Should you have doubt about a product's worth, you can check the following things. Has the invention been published in a peer-reviewed journal? Watch out for the phrase, the more intelligent the person, the harder it is to understand the product. Look at the prototype. Has it been tested under different circumstances? What are the measuring instruments connected to? For how long has the company been around? How big is the company's network? Does it match with the previous business successes? Is the correspondence with the producer very enthusiastic at first and then gets vague as soon as it gets serious? Watch out for gish galloping, which means that the inventor gives an overload of unimportant information in order to distract from the relevant facts. Also, when the producer makes the technology look more complex than it actually is, for example by using exotic terms. Furthermore, keep in mind that patents prove nothing. Listen, talk, and discuss with peers, ask experts, and never feel embarrassed to ask the same question over and over again until you understand. Reach out to other people that have experience with the company or the product. And lastly, watch out for keywords like infinite energy. Keep in mind that not all products or companies that fulfill one or more of these points aren't necessarily a hoax or a fake product. Thank you for bearing with me until the very end of this rambling and personal episode. I genuinely hope that I could teach you something new today. If you have missed a new co-host of this show, Theo, don't worry, he will be back next week. We are planning some fun episodes for the upcoming weeks. So in particular, we will talk more about batteries. So for that matter, Theo will give you a brief crash course in battery history and battery terms next week, followed by episodes about lithium production and battery performance. If you would like to connect with me, you can do so on Facebook or Twitter, or more personal, write me an email. And also, if you like this podcast and would like to support it somehow, you can do so either by leaving a rating in your podcast app or donating on Patreon. So links are in the show notes. I'm very grateful for your input and your contribution, and I am so excited to talk about electric vehicles again soon. So have the best day, and bye!